First things first, Ben. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm alright. Before we go into the record, quickly a couple steps back. Do you remember the first album you ever bought?
Barely. The first album I ever bought with my own money, as opposed to my parents buying it for me, was probably a Ryan Adams or a Springsteen album. Yeah.
And well, you mentioned these two artists. Why one of the? You can pick one, and why this artist?
I guess, you know, I fell really in love with acoustic guitar and solo singer-songwriters when I was growing up. When I got to about 15 years old, I was kind of into pop punk before then and all kinds of different things. But for me, you know, when you hear Ryan Adams' Heartbreaker, it's just like the ultimate. It's like the Bible of acoustic songwriters, you know. And that was an amazing record for me. In Springsteen, Nebraska, the same. As I've got older, my tastes have widened and changed a lot, but yeah, off the top of my head, those are ones I can remember. But I know before then I was probably, I bought with like Christmas money, like pop compilation albums when I was like 10, you know, that had like, you know, cheesy kind of dance bangers on them, you know. And
well, before you got into these singer-songwriter type artists, what role did music play? Was it big for you?
Always, yeah. I've always been obsessed with music. You know, I grew up, and my dad would be listening to the Beatles when we were around the house, and my mum would be listening to Rolling Stones and Beatles, Nina Simone in my dad's house were big ones. And I can remember being young and being sat by the radio. We have in the UK we have like a Sunday top 40 chart, and I remember being sat by the radio waiting for my favourite songs to come on. I remember Cher, Believe. Do you know that? No matter how hard I try. That tune. I remember being obsessed with that, and when you're that young, you don't really know why. You don't know what melody is or lyric is or flow, but it just, I mean, you know what it's like. Music just does something to you. It makes you feel good, and I don't know if it even makes you feel good is the right way to put it, but it moves you emotionally and spiritually. And I remember I've just always been obsessed, you know, and my instinct when I've ever picked up a guitar or been by a piano is to always write a new melody and create new things, and you know, to write songs. Like I'm in love with songs in the purest form of song, you know, melody and lyrics, and whether that's presented on a hip hop record or a metal record or an acoustic record or a folk record but you know, I listen to classical music as well. I've been falling asleep on this tour listening to I think she's a Lebanese singer called Fairuz. I think she's from the Lebanon. And it's just amazing kind of Arabic, traditional influenced, slightly more contemporary than purely traditional stuff, and the melodies just really move me, you know. Like, I don't know why, I don't understand, you know, what she's saying, but, or even the Memoirs of a Geisha soundtrack I've listened to, you know, regularly by, I think it's John Williams, and it's just, I listen to that kind of music before I go on to kind of calm me down, you know.
And this experience of the way you experience music, did it change when you started to play music yourself? Then you mentioned all these melodies, and did you listen to music differently after that, or does it still give you the same?
I think I'm still the same, you know. I'm still in love with it and as obsessed with it and passionate about it as I've always been, you know. I think as soon as you start getting carried away with everything that's going on in your career as such, you kind of lose track of that. And you know, there's it's about take it back to being the kid in the basement, you know what I mean, and jamming with your friends or writing and creating and messing around on laptops or guitar samplers, whatever, you know. And if you stay in that beautiful mindset, no matter how far you get in your life, you know, then you can always take it back to that original, you know, that initial spark, and that's really important for songwriting. But as soon as you start overthinking songwriting or trying to plan to fit, you know, a certain mold, then you lose that instinctive kind of flow, you know.
And is that difficult to do, to stay in that mindset? Because, well, obviously you've had a great loss before this new album came out. So was it difficult for you to recapture that kind of mindset and that style of songwriting?
Yeah, I think it is difficult, you know, and I think that's one of the main crafts of being a songwriter, something that you have to always try and chase and remember that that's the most important thing. That's like top of the tower, you know, that initial instinct or spark for a song. Sure. But yeah, I mean, it's not, I wouldn't say it's easy, you know, everyone would do it, so I don't know what the right way to put it is. You just have to chase it, you know. You just have to chase it and focus purely on the song. But some days in the studio, you know, you come out of the studio at 11 at night, or you come off stage at 11 at night, and it's either the best thing ever, and you're so buzzed up and you feel like, you know, in heaven, or if it goes badly, you're like so far below the ground, you know. And I think that's, you know, myself included and most other creatives I know and songwriters who are most of my dearest friends in the world, all struggle with a certain type of craziness sometimes, you know, which comes from being passionate and exceptionally passionate, you know. Not just about your own music, but about other people's music as well. Because we know, like, you know, when you walked in, the Chance record was on, or the Radiohead record was on, and I need that to help me breathe, you know. We all know what it's like to turn something on and just be so enthused by it, or be in the club and have a tune come on and be moved by it, or be driving, or be sad or happy, you know, like, music is like the soundtrack to people's lives, you know.
Sure.
And it's my own music isn't the soundtrack to my life, but it's a soundtrack to a lot of other people's lives, you know. It references things in my life for sure, you know, but the soundtrack to my life are other artists. So to know that my music can soundtrack other people's lives is an ultimate compliment and means more than any, you know, tickets or records or plane journeys or madness or anything, you know.
And in particular with After the Rain then, because it is a very personal album, have you heard a lot of reactions from people that they experience it that way?
Yeah, I mean, we've only released one song from it so far, but when we put up that song and I kind of announced that I was coming back, you know, after such a long time away, the most amazing thing was there were thousands of comments on our Facebook page, you know, people saying, wow, your music has helped me through, you know, the most intense, literally life and death things, you know. Sure. Intense things that people can go through, and that is the ultimate compliment, you know, to know, like I said, that you soundtrack someone's life, or the death of one of their loved ones, or the birth of their child, or their wedding day, or someone's funeral, you know, which are things that, you know, my music has been involved in a lot, and I react like that again to other artists, you know. I'm still like, I remember a couple of years ago going up to Tallest Man on Earth and going, yo man, like, I love your music so much. And it's the first time I'd done that in years, and people say that to me every night, and it's still beautiful, but I'm still like, you have to be inspired by people around you, you know, and other artists that are in the game, because as soon as you just start being self-focused and overly self-aware, I guess, you can lose sight, you know.
And then you mentioned The Tallest Man on Earth. Was he one of the artists that you kind of turned to when you were going through that dark time? That's
a good question. He's an artist that I've listened to a lot. I mean, there are many artists, you know. It's not all artists in his genre. I mean, I think to me he's one of the best living songwriters. You know, I think he's amazing and he's a super nice guy. But you know, I would listen to Kanye as much as Tallest Man on Earth, and even though their energies are very different kind of energies, they're still visceral energies, you know?
Sure. So, when did After the Rain, when did the first song that ended up on the album started to take shape?
The first song that ended up on the album was Tilikum. That was the first one I wrote, bar a song called Cocaine Doll that was an old song that I decided to bring back for the album. But Tilikum was definitely the first kind of initial spark, and you're thinking, wow, like, this is a song that actually really means a lot to me and I'm incredibly proud of, and zoned in an acute and emotional way. And from there it was like, okay, I was always kind of like, wow, this song is definitely going to open the album, you know what I mean? And it is track one on the album. And I'm really proud of that song, as I'm proud of all of them. But sometimes, you know, you just feel when you're singing, I close my eyes when I'm singing a lot, and your mind goes back to that initial spark, you know, where you were either geographically or spiritually when that song came about. So Tilikum was definitely the kind of starting point of the album, and I must have written that in probably like November 2013. So, but I was never in a rush for this album, you know. People keep asking me like, why so long, why so long? And obviously I had stuff going on in my personal life, but that was massively affected me as a human. But I might release my third album in a year or in 10 years, you know. I'll release it when it's ready and when I'm proud of it and when I think it has an important message, one that I am that I consider to be totally truthful. And your idea of what is truthful changes from when you're a 19-year-old man to when you're a 26-year-old man, you know. And now I'm 26, and when I was making Last Smoke, I was 19, so... And I've been creative the whole time, writing by myself, writing with other artists, always, you know, going to shows and being in love with music. But your idea of what truth is changes, because when you're young, it's kind of a creative thing to be like, oh, so I'm feeling this, I'm going to write it down and sing it, and boom, that's it, you know. And there's a beauty in that sometimes. But now I try and go deeper for what is truthful, you know, because sometimes us stupid humans, we think something, and then sometimes, unfortunately, we say it. You know what I mean? Sometimes that's really beautiful, but sometimes it's also really bad as well, you know. So I'm definitely more considerate, a more considerate songwriter, I think, if you understand what I mean by considerate in the context of what I just said, you know.